Hello, fellow collectors. Jambo Comics here today. I was going to show you some of my favorite fantasy science fiction authors' work and just some of my favorite fantasy books and comics today. You can see by what we've got on the stand there's a Star Reach with a Elric, a Melnibone is how I pronounce it. I'm sure that's not the correct way, by Mr. Michael Moorcock. Mr. Moorcock is one of my favorite fantasy authors, and he wrote a lot of fantastic books about the Champion Eternal, which Elric was part of, along with 3 or 4 other versions of the same character. Really good stuff, amazing stories, and some of the best fantasy I think that there is out there. If you haven't read any of those books, do yourself a favor and check them out. I mean, there is some great, really imaginative stories, and Michael Moorcock is very underrated as a writer, author. His stories are just mind-boggling, and the dude's imagination is just wow. I mean, when you read the books and you just picture them in your mind, some of the things and the worlds he creates and stuff is just amazing stuff. So anyways, yeah, we got this, and it is a signed copy by Mr. Frank Bruner of his version of the Elric story. I think the Dreaming City was what that was adapted from, the first Elric story or Elric novel. Yeah, check that out. Let me show you something first of all. I'll move you here for a second. We got a nice Elric picture here. It's like a poster we got that was done by Michael Whalen, and it's just always like that stuff. Amazing artwork. He did the art on the doll books from back in the day, from some of the first publishings of Elric stories and the Elric books. And Elric is probably the most famous of the version of the Champion Eternal. I mean, he's been in different parts of literature and other comics. Like, he was also, this is the second part of a 2-part story. He appeared in Conan the Barbarian back in the early 70s. This is a Barry Windsor Smith version of Elric there. His first appearance was in 14. This is the second part of that story. And they kind of changed up things a little bit, but it was a good story. Pretty cool there, putting Conan, the Robert E. Howard hero, and Elric, the Michael Moorcock hero, Champion Eternal, in there together. Good story. If you haven't read that, yeah, that's a good read also. And yeah, Pacific Comics came along and made a version of Elric and put it in comic form. This was P. Craig Russell art, and I think Michael T. Gilbert did some stuff too. Roy Thomas did the writing on these, or the adaptation of these, and really great. Really, this one's in terrible shape, and I apologize. Now, I had this whole run of the first book, and they've gotten away from me over the years, but yeah, just they're really great. If you see those, they're great reads. The art is fantastic. Craig Russell, Michael Gilbert, yeah, of course Roy Thomas writing it. I mean, great stuff. Look for those, check those out. Elric, and let's see, I got part of the second book that they adapted. This was from Sailor on the Seas of Fate of the Elric saga, and that was number 3 of 7. There were 7 books in that one. There's number 4. And yeah, like I say, fantastic artwork and all these. And quite the imagination. And this is part of the 3rd book of the Elric saga. This is Weird of the White Wolf. This is the first one of that. And this is number 2 of Weird of the White Wolf. And over the years, it seems like I've noticed that a lot of movies and other media have borrowed from Michael Moorcock stuff, and because I read these a long time ago, and just noticed other things. I guess that's a form of flattery if people want to imitate you and borrow from you, I guess. This is from The Bane of the Black Sword. This is number 2 of that book. Get those out of the way. I didn't realize how many of the Michael Moorcock comics I had, but I'm still missing some of them, believe it or not. This is number 3 of The Bane of the Black Sword. And we're starting a new book here. This is called The Vanishing Tower. That is the first one of the Elric book, The Vanishing Tower. This is number 2 of The Vanishing Tower. And I don't think we even made it to Stormbringer. I don't have any of those, because Stormbringer was the last book in the Elric saga. Other artists and people have done their versions of Elric, and even Walt Simonson got with Michael Moorcock, and they had a little series of Elric that ran for a little bit. That was number 3. This is number 2, The Making of a Sorcerer. And this is number 1. Sword is quite huge there. Really great stuff. That was a pretty good little thing that Walt did. And they're still making some of the Elric stuff today. I mean, I think I've got more of these somewhere. I just haven't found them. I apologize. Kind of making up new stories. Elric, the balance is lost. Speaking of the balance between order and chaos, there's number 3. And kind of updated art. It's pretty cool. Totally different story though. And I had quite a few of this version of the Champion Eternal. He was always my favorite. I mean, I really liked Elric, so I guess they're probably kind of tied. This is Corum and the Chronicles of Corum. And this is from the first book that Michael Moorcock wrote, called The Knight of the Swords of Corum and the Chronicles of Corum. This is a Mike Magnolia cover there. Pretty cool art. Had a couple of those actually. And this was number 2. And Corum gets his eye put out and gets his hand cut off by humans. And in issue number 3 here, he gets replacements from I think they were calling them the dead gods at that time. The hand, the eye, he gets into other worlds with that eye. Kind of wild stuff. And here is book number 4 of that, Knight of the Swords. And I think he's fighting Elric in that one. He was one of the gods that the Mabden, the humans, worshipped. And let's see, this is picking up with the second book there. This is Chronicles of Corum and the Queen of the Swords. There's number 5. Here's number 6. flying sharks. I mean, come on. Here is number 7. Let's see. Let's see who's doing the art here. Not sure. Goose. Is the gentleman's name? Person's name? They were switching at the time. This is number 8. And a lot of these were made by First Comics. They had a pretty good run on all the Michael Moorcock Champion Eternal stuff. And this is King of the Swords. This is the last book of that trilogy. It's number 9. And this is number 11. And this has 3 of the versions of the Champion Eternal. There was Elric, there's Corum, and there's Ercos. They're all aspects of the same being. And this is number 12. This is the last comic of that story, the King of the Swords. Very good stuff. Quite the imagination. Yeah, look for some of those. I mean, they're just, I mean, you'll thank me if you go to read those and you find them somewhere. Yeah, you'll thank me. And this was probably the first stories I read of Corum, even though this was the second books in the second series of Corum. I really enjoyed these. This is called, well, The Bull and the Spear. This is what this is from. And Corum awakens years later because he's, they describe him as being kind of elvish, his race was, and their lifespan is a lot longer than a human's lifespan. And so he has lived for hundreds of years, and the humans call him forth again to fight for them. And yeah, the world's totally different. He kind of secluded and shut himself off from the world, and yeah, still he's fighting for the people who named him and stuff. And it's really good stories. Scaphanon, the dwarf, which was funny because yeah, he was way bigger than anybody else, but in his race of people, he was considered a dwarf. Great stories. And then there was another version of the Champion Eternal, Hawkmoon, and this is from the Jewel in the Skull book, and they were pretty interesting. Very, very cool stories too of Hawkmoon, Dorian Hawkmoon. This is number 2 of 4. Jewel in the Skull. This is number 1 of, I think, the second book, The Sword of the Dawn. And this is number 3 of The Sword of the Dawn. And this was the last book of, I think, Hawkmoon series was The Mad God's Amulet. That was number 1. This is number 2 of The Mad God's Amulet. This is number 3. Great art on that stuff too. And number 4. So, got just most of the comics I have of the Champion Eternal stuff. I'm missing a few. I'm gonna have to get some more of them, but I thought I'd show you a few of the paperbacks. If you ever see these, grab them. This is the Swords trilogy of Corum, the Chronicles of Corum. This has the Knight of the Swords, the Queen of the Swords, and the King of the Swords. This is the first 3 books of Corum. Those were really great. I've read those several times. And let's see. This was the second trilogy of Corum, Chronicles of Corum, where he's fighting the dead gods of Moor. And this has the bull and the spear, the oak and the ram, and the sword and the stallion. Amazing stuff. Let's see. We've got a couple of these different versions of them. Here's the bull and the spear. It's the older version. And I used to find a lot of these books in like the used bookstores. And, you know, you get them pretty cheap. And you probably still can, actually. Great books. And you can probably find a pretty good run of them. And this one is one of my prized possessions because it is signed by Mr. Micheal Moorcock. Great book. Treasure that. And I apologize, I'm moving a little bit slow today. Had a work injury, really messed up my hand. About 30 stitches, and it's not very mobile, so apologies for not being too swift. I'll show you some of the Elric books I have. This was just a copy of that picture up above there. This was just different fantasy stories, and I think it had a Elric story in it. So that's why I have it. This is actually the first version that was, I think, published of Micheal Moorcock's Elric. This is called The Dreaming City. I think when he redid it and it was published by Daw Books, it was called Elric of Meltbone. And I loaned out my Sailor on the Seas of Fate, which is the second book of Elric, to a friend and never got it back. So thanks a lot, Will. I don't have that anymore. I'm gonna have to rebuy it and replace it. But anyway, there's number 3, Weird of the White Wolf. These had amazing covers on them by Michael Whelan, and I think that's what kind of attracted me to those books at first. Let's see. This is a newer version of The Bane of the Black Sword. 4th book. The Vanishing Tower. It's the 5th book. The Michael Whelan cover. Really cool cover. And this was the last book of Elric, Stormbringer. Another Michael Whelan cover. Amazing stuff. Amazing. And Elric was so popular, people were writing Mr. Moorcock and telling him, hey man, we need some more Elric books and stuff. So he wrote a few more later on. Called The Dream Thief's Daughter. This one was fairly new. Revenge of the Rose. Let's see, this was a newer one. Fortress of the Pearl. And read this one a while back. It's pretty cool. The Skraeling Tree. The Skraelings were what the Vikings referred to the American Indians, called them Skraelings. So, and had this book, Pawn of Chaos. And it had the different versions of the Champion Eternal. There's Elric. There's Hawkmoon. There's Corum. There's the sign of chaos there. And there's Order. The sign of Order with the one arrow pointed straight up. That was a pretty cool book. Let's see. One more book I'll show you here. These are just, this had a great cover on it. This was just different authors' versions of Elric stories. It has a great Micheal Whalen cover there. And yeah, just good stuff. I mean, there's been a lot of literature about Elric. I think they even had like a video game back in the day. There's some of the Hawkmoon series. Count Brass. This is Time with Hawkmoon there. I've got oodles of Michael Moorcock books. Here's an Aircoast book, Civil Warrior. More of the Champion Eternal. Kind of wild looking art on the front of that one. And yeah, just amazing stuff. If you ever get a chance to get any of those, or if you have them and haven't read them, I don't know why you wouldn't have read them already, but if you haven't, then yeah, check them out, read them. They're great. Here's a art book of Micheal Whalen. There's the Stormbringer cover he did for the Doll book series. See if I can find a couple more of these. There's the, I think that's from the Bane of the Black Sword. That's pretty cool. There's Elric also. There's the Vanishing Tower one we've seen. Really cool. And here's the Weird of the White Wolf, where he's using Stormbringer to suck the soul out of that poor creature there on the ground. Let's see if there's any more of these. Oh, okay. Here is the picture for the cover of the Doll book, Sailor on the Seas of Fate. Amazing artwork. Really cool stuff. There's Elric on the front of the boat. Yeah, so I think that's about it for Elric in this book. But yeah, anyway, yeah, check those out. If you see any of those old comics, they're worth getting and checking out and reading. They have amazing art. P. Craig Russell did some great work, and so did Michael Gilbert in a lot of those Elric books. And yeah, they're worth reading and checking out. So do yourselves a favor and pick them up. And I appreciate you guys taking the time to stop by and look at the stuff we had up today. And as always, leave a comment. I'll get back with you guys. I really appreciate you leaving comments, and hit that like and hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Jambo out.